It is now 6:05 on May 19th. We have all counselors with the exception of Counselor Linda Caprera, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, at this time, I will open it up for any public comment. If there's anyone in the audience or online that has a comment, go ahead and raise your hand. Hearing nothing from anybody online or in the audience, we will move on to item 75, and we will open the public hearing for the Charter Revision Charter Commission member election, as well as the school budget referendum. It is now 6:06. If there is anybody that has any questions or any comments regarding the public hearing or the school budget or Charter Commission. All right, hearing nothing from anyone in the audience or online, we will go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:06. Thank you very much for Dr. Foley and Alicia Lawson for coming in. We appreciate that. All right, moving on to item 76, consideration of order 2025-06, ratifying the town manager appointment for ambulance chief Christopher Moretto, who is here in the audience. Thank you for coming. Is there any motion from the council?
Manager appointment of the ambulance chief, Christopher Moretto.
Any discussion?
So if I could, I'd like Chief Moretto to come to the microphone, just give himself an introduction to the council. Chief, if you'll just tell them what you'd like them to know about you.
Good evening. Just would like to say, thanks for the opportunity to be the chief of your ambulance service. I've been doing this now, or in the fire and EMS for about 45 years now. So, and I'm finishing up with the city of Auburn as a captain, firefighter, paramedic there. Also been a EMS director and deputy director at Medcare Ambulance for about 30 years, got done there a little while ago. So I'd like to think that I bring a lot of experience and knowledge and to the table. And it sounds like Winthrop Ambulance Service is a outstanding service from what I've seen and heard everywhere, and a great bunch of guys and girls that work there. And I'd like to continue to foster that great service and move it forward and help it grow and for the people of the communities that it serves. So.
Much and welcome to Winthrop. We're happy to have you here.
If I can say one thing about Chief Moretto, we talked to a lot of people who know Chief Moretto, have worked with Chief Moretto, and to a person, they all had really good things to say about him. So I feel really confident that the leadership of the Winthrop Ambulance Service is now in really steady, experienced hands. So we're really happy to have him, as I'm sure the members of the service are as well.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? All are in favor. Thank you. All right, and also with that, we would like to acknowledge that this week is Emergency Medical Services Week, and we do have some EMS members here in the audience, so we do want to thank you very much for coming in today. And so I have a proclamation here for EMS Week to designate the week of May 18th to the 24th, 2025 as Emergency Medical Services Week, whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury, and whereas emergency medical services fill healthcare gaps by providing important out-of-hospital care, including preventative medicine, follow-up care, and access to telemedicine. And whereas the emergency medical services system consists of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical service providers by designating the Emergency Medical Services Week. Now, therefore, I, Shannon McDonald, Chair of the Winthrop, Maine Town Council, in recognition of this event, do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th to the 24th, 2025 as Emergency Medical Services Week. The theme for the 51st anniversary of EMS Week is EMS Week, We Care for Everyone. I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities in honor of the EMS profession and the essential service it provides. Signed, Shannon McDonald, Town Council Chair. So thank you very much. I'm going to present this to you. And if we could have everyone stand up, we'd love to take your picture and just acknowledge you. Thank you. So, 77, consideration of order 2026-05, accepting relinquished firearms and authorizing the Winthrop Police Department to dispose of relinquished firearms. Now, I understand that we've received 5 firearms in the last 6 months from 3 different citizens. And so this order is just to allow the police department to accept and trade those relinquished firearms. And trade and to accept them and trade them. You have the documents.
Well, looked into the auction versus what kind of value are we getting out of these trading?
I don't, not a gun person, so I don't know anything about the value of guns, but this was the chief's recommendation that we trade these firearms for ammunition, which of course then the police department would use. I don't know if we were to auction them and sell them. Yeah, I would think, I don't know that we're licensed.
How many dealers that hold auctions?
Okay, but I don't know that we wouldn't have some liability involved with those. In other words, are the guns well-functioning guns? If someone bought them and, you know, a gun exploded in their hand, are we liable at that point? I don't know.
Or anybody else auctioning them? I mean, they auction them all the time.
I know, Roy, but I'm worried about us, you know, and our liability. So I don't know the answers to that questions. You know, I thought this was a pretty routine matter, so I didn't ask the police chief to be here tonight. But if you guys want to table this and have him come back at the next meeting, can
Table it. I'm looking to make sure that we get the value out of them and
So it's listed right here. We've got a Taurus PT 25 caliber, Taurus PT 22 caliber, US revolver, model 1900, 38 caliber, US revolver, model 1801 32 caliber, and then Rossi 38 caliber revolver. And so what Chief Ferland is looking to do is to trade those with a federally licensed firearms dealer in exchange for ammunition for the police department.
Wait. That's it.
But this is just what our chief is doing. Is there
Isn't
a motion?
that what he's probably doing?
He's trading, so I would have thought he was going to a gun dealer and hand him in how many police service guns. That's what trading.
He just wants. They buy a lot, they have to qualify every year.
Yeah, I mean, they have to train with their firearms on a,
Think
Hope
of
it
the way
would
I-
the value, which is
Value is the concern. It's just making.
And again,
it the-
and again, I can't really speak to this. It's not my bailiwick. So again, if you guys want to raise those questions with the police chief, I would suggest that we
It
table
would
it.
just, instead of raising continue this, I would just advocate
Paul, we
that-
want him to get the
make
most
sure
out
that
of
he
it.
gets the most value we can out of him,
Yeah.
which I'm sure it's on his radar anyway, but
Okay.
he may be. You don't know where he's.
I do not.
So with that, is there a suggested motion?
I'd make a motion to authorize Winthrop Police Department to accept and dispose of the relinquished firearms. I guess with the intent to achieve the most amount of value out of them that we can.
Second.
Any discussion? Intent to, yeah. All right, all in favor? All are in favor. Thank you. All right, item 78, consideration of the April 2025 disbursement warrants.
I have a couple questions on these. I just had a chance to look at this afternoon. I noticed that on March 27th, we bought a treadmill or fitness bike.
That was replacing some equipment over at the ambulance station that was damaged when we had the water leaks.
Okay.
So that expense was covered by insurance.
There was also and I'm just comparing this to other GA disbursements. There's a blackout. What's
Yeah, that's a name that's redacted. So
is this the name of like who we paid the rent to? It says rent, general
yes,
assistance, GA expense, rent.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got too many people talking one time. So can you repeat that, Roy?
It says rent, I'd say some sort of acronym, a 1 month GA rent. And then it's blacked out as to who the rent was.
What's the amount?
$1,100.
Yeah. So
I thought that the rent amount that we paid for GA and assistant was 700 and something.
no, so that's for recovery residents. So the maximum for a recovery residence is $695.25. This is rent for 3 people who are seeking political asylum in our country, and they're staying in a apartment. And so the maximum for that apartment for 3 people is $1,100. So that name is the name of the landlord. And I don't know that I don't know that it necessarily needs to be blacked out because
I'm just curious.
he's not the applicant. So that's
That's the
confidential.
only thing I've seen ever blacked out on.
Yeah. So I will, I mean, if you guys want to know who it is, I'm happy to share the
I'm
person's
just
name. with
curious
you.
as to why it was blacked out.
Yeah, I don't think that it needs to be, frankly.
One other question I had was and this is for I'm assuming a stipend for work boots. I don't have a problem with that at all. Just, I've never seen a $350 pair of work boots.
So that's in the, one of our union contracts. And so what happens is they go and they buy the boots, they bring us the receipt, and then we reimburse them. And so that's the maximum amount is $350. And again, I'm not an expert
Is
on
that
work
paid
boots.
up to the receipt? Or is that just paid $350 and?
No. They have to bring in the receipt for what they've actually purchased, and then we reimburse them for that amount.
Could it be like? Just curious.
I mean, I just did, before
No,
I
I
came
think the
here,
contract says they're only allowed to purchase one pair of boots.
just did a quick Google search on work boots before I came here,
Yeah,
and it would have to be one damn special pair of work boots.
okay. Well, if you want us, if,
I'm just curious. It was just a little light bulb went off when I saw that amount for a pair of work boots.
okay,
that's all.
so if you want me to look into that even further, then I will. So,
Well, no, sometimes they do.
Sometimes you look at something and it's a little alarming and that's, even though it's small, it's not that big a deal. It just stands out. That's all.
Mine were 3 because I have like electric. I go in a substation. I have to, they have to be rated. I don't know what those are, right? We have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying you can, yeah.
No,
Nothing
It's not
else?
crazy.
other than that, I guess I'd make a motion to approve the disbursement warrants.
All in favor? All are in favor. Thank you. Consideration of recommendations from the Appointments Committee. Were there any appointments?
Sorry.
No appoint?
Talked to multiple people that inquiring about charter commission. So there is interest. As soon as we develop a process, I told them we would.
so I'm just curious because we did actually have one citizen who is now interested in running as a write-in candidate. So, so were these folks interested in being appointed or running as a
They
write-in?
both, I think, wanted just general information, but I think they were looking at, I had only mentioned the appointment process. At this point, I figured that would be just the easiest. So other than that,
I'm sure.
then be 2, so there'd be, I mean, there's still room, so. They both were, yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
And both,
So-
all are very
Yeah.
good
So assuming that
before.
assuming that the voters approve the formation of the Charter Commission on June 17th, we will begin immediately on June 18th, publicizing the fact that we'll be accepting applications for appointments.
Just need to
body.
lay out, like, if we want to use the same application that we have, committees, or if we want to come up with something.
You're the chair of the
Oh,
appointment
fine,
committee, but I mean, in my mind, I think the application that we have is fine because it does give you a chance to sort of
You just
explain
email.
why you're interested in serving.
That's what.
So moving on, if there are any public comments, anyone in the audience? All right, we'll move on to the town manager's report.
Okay, just a couple of short items here. On Wednesday, Winthrop is going to be hosting the Maine Downtown Council down at the library. They're having one of their annual meetings, and so they wanted to have it here. And so it's going to be a chance for us to sort of pick the brains of some of the experts on the Maine Downtown Council about what we can do to further downtown revitalization in our community. So if any of you are interested in attending, let me know. It's from noon until 1:45 on Wednesday. Similarly, on June the 6th, I emailed you folks about this previously. We're going to have in this room a comp plan discussion beginning at 11:30 that's going to be facilitated by Steve McDermott, who's leading our comp plan committee.
It's June 6th, you said?
June 2nd. Did I say 6th? I'm sorry, June 2nd. Yes, the implementation committee. Correct. So, they're going to have a discussion during which Steve and other comp plan committee members are going to be talking to some of the implementers of the plan about what the role of the comp plan implementation committee is going to be during that process. And then following that, and so you all are invited to attend that. If you'd like, just let us know because we're going to be providing some lunch. So just let us know. And again, that's from, I think, 11:30 until 1 on June the 2nd. Then we're going to come back and Steve's going to do a similar presentation for you folks on June the 16th at one of your regular meetings. And it'll be an opportunity to go over some of the high points again of the comp plan, because we think that's going to be important leading up to a discussion that we'd like to have on July the 7th about council priorities. So some of you will recall we did that exercise early on where we set what the priorities are. We want to do that again to make sure that we're pursuing your priorities. And we think it's important that you have sort of the comp plan top of mind when you set your priorities. So there's sort of a domino effect of different discussions that we're going to be having.
So I
Now
I
in
read through that, the chart that you had
Mm-hmm,
that was sent with that,
mm-hmm.
and I have some concerns or input on some of the land use stuff. Where can I give my input, or is this like a listen-only sort of presentation?
Well, the plan is what the plan is now. It's been approved by you guys and by the state.
Yeah, but we were promised when it was getting approved that we were not going to, just like it says in some of those, in that chart, how it's been relayed, that we are now going to go and change a bunch of ordinances to achieve what the comp plan, which we were told are recommendations,
Right.
what the comp plan wants to recommend. It's
Right.
right in there, the chart that we're going to go in and change the ordinances.
So for each one of those recommendations dealing with land use, there'll be a process. And so the planning board will decide, okay, we're going to look at implementing this recommendation. And as part of that, there'll be public discussions, public meetings. If they decide to pursue an ordinance, then that involves a process. And eventually that ordinance would come before this body to make a final determination. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to weigh in on the recommendations of the comp plan and whether or not they should move forward. And keep in mind that my previous experience with the Belgrade comp plan is that once people started digging into it, some of those recommendations, they determined, you know what? At the time, this probably sounded pretty good, and now we don't think it's
Some
such a
of them
good
even
idea.
contradict each other. Some of the recommendations, you got a recommendation to do one thing here, further down the page, you got a recommendation to do something completely
Yeah,
different.
It's just a roadmap. So it's a guideline for us to try to follow along of some of the basic needs I think we have. But I think if we're going to do anything major, it's going to change things that we have already today for bylaws or ordinances are going to come before us. And then we will, if it makes sense, we'll go under the recommendation of the planning board or another committee that may be presenting it. So.
And again, when we get 10 years down the road, we're going to see a lot of recommendations that were achieved from the comp plan, and we'll see a fair number that weren't achieved simply because they weren't feasible or, we didn't feel like we had the time and resources to address all 300 recommendations or whatever they are.
Along with what Roy said, we were, several of us, including it's not reference material. This sounds like it's getting far too strict. Telling the planning board what they shouldn't do. Not like it one bit.
No, Andy.
The other piece of that is, I do appreciate the support for the implementation. Because the last comp plan I was part of, formed an implementation committee, we got absolutely zip support and we got nowhere. So thank you at least for that.
Yeah. So you're right that the comp plan is not an ordinance. It's not a regulation. It is, as Jim said, it's a roadmap for different things that we will want to explore to determine whether or not to implement them. And if so, how? So ultimately, the planning board will decide what it wants to explore and what it may want to pursue. And even more ultimately than that, this body will determine whether or not to approve anything that requires a change in ordinances. Lastly, just a reminder, a week from today, these offices will be closed because it'll be Memorial. That's all I have.
Questions or anything from the council?
How did the day of Karen go?
It was fabulous. Thanks for asking. It was, it was a lot of fun, and I think it was a good opportunity for town employees to interact in a way that they typically don't and do some good work. And I don't know if you've driven by the the parking lot down there, but the flower beds all around the municipal lot and along Main Street look a lot better. We got some great help from some high schoolers over from Winthrop High School. And so, and then after we were done with that, then we went over to Maple Cemetery and just combed the cemetery to pick up trash and twigs and so forth. So it was great. Thank y'all for letting us close the office that day. I think it was well worth it.
So, and two other comments I have. Another one is, it dawned on me after I know we've already passed it, but I'd be curious that allowing the police department to do as we're doing, but be curious to find out what other towns are, or how they're handling something like that as well, for future.
Yeah, you're talking about firearms in
Yeah,
particular?
yeah. It dawned on me, what does other people do in that instance?
I can send out a question over the listserv tomorrow and see.
Not that it changes what we're doing with these
Yeah.
now, but just something for future.
Yeah.
And the last thing, and you may get to it at some point, is you discussed a little bit about town planning. What direction are we heading in that whole, with the TIF and Dawn and you were posting a position. I'm just kind of, how's that all working in the office, and how's that flowing, with Dawn and being the town planner? What projects do we have coming up before us, and what's she been working on?
She's been working on, and of course, this time of year, Jim, there are a lot of shoreland applications that go before the planning
sure.
board. And so the ones that involve a non-conforming structure, the ones that absolutely positively must go before the planning board. So that's a lot of it. She is working with the planning board on potentially implementing some site design plans and processes that will give our zoning ordinance a little bit more structure, so that it's not a matter of who's serving on the planning board at any given time as to whether or not an application gets approved or not. So it makes the process a little less arbitrary and capricious.
You getting involved in the TIF and maybe something more?
So as we move forward with the TIF, yes, I have kept her in the loop
Good.
with all of the correspondence that I've had with our attorney. And she did see the letter that I sent to the property owner that we, are currently dealing with. And so, yeah, so she's going to be instrumental in what we do with the TIF. In fact, we had a conversation the other day, and she said, can I be involved in helping to recommend what the boundaries are? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So, and two, so the TIF and the downtown revitalization may end up going hand in hand with one another, and she's excited about that. And so, yeah, I think one of the things I told Dawn the other day, because she was sort of wondering how she was doing, and I said, I don't know that I've encountered anyone who hasn't worked with you who hasn't really appreciated your help and expertise. And it's really helped us to have, I think, better process for approving planning board applications in particular.
Done business and applications.
Yeah. In fact, let's see, last week we met twice with some property owners who were just sort of at sea as to what to do with some projects that they were proposing. And after dealing with Dawn, like one of the applicants actually hugged her. She was so appreciative of the help that she was getting. So I do think we're seeing value from that. And thirdly, Dawn has been talking to me about applying for some state grants that might help us with some trail development, because the Conservation Commission is very interested in pursuing those sort of projects.
Great. And I'd like to just quick shout out of whoever was listening publicly, but just the accident, it was a crazy accident up by Hannaford and EMS. They were all there, and the fire department and the police. It looks like they did a fantastic job of navigating that, because that looked like it took hours and hours to.
Was that just today?
No, that was last week. Yeah, I mean, they were digging out that dump truck out of the ditch.
Yes.
So that was that was a long day.
Yeah.
And they handled it well, because it looked like yes, yeah. So I just say shout out to them to putting the long hours in, and it looked like it was very controlled, because a serious accident, but they were handling it well. The traffic was flowing as best it could be. So
I have to tell you, after hearing sort of what a tenuous situation a lot of non-municipal ambulance services are in. It makes me really feel fortunate that we have an ambulance service here. I think our police department is top notch, and at the moment, I'm super thankful for not only the fire department but the leadership that we have in the fire department. So, shout out to Chief Brooks.
Thank you very much. And so I think that concludes the public portion of our meeting. And we will move into executive session 1 MRSA 4056A for personnel. I'll make a motion. And all in favor? All are in favor. Thank you. And so it is now 6:35.